A blessed day, my fellow senior high school teachers. I am fortunate and it is an honor for me to share to you some of my sample activity sheets. And this is a challenge for us teachers and this time of COVID-19 pandemic. And we just have to put our heart and bear in mind that we are doing this not for ourselves but for our students. So I hope you will get an idea from some of my activity sheets. And by the way, I am Janus Flores from Banta National High School. And my activity sheets is, or should I say, are for the subject practical research too. That is quantitative research. So it is not a joke. And this is intended for the first quarter, week 7, specifically days 1 and 2. Okay, we must remember that we have to indicate the time frame of that. So you will have that as your heading, the grade level, of course, the subject, and then the time frame. And of course, my activity sheets is for the topic listing hypothesis. If you can notice, my hypothesis is plural since they will not be writing just one but several hypotheses. And of course, it is very important that our activity sheet is aligned with the most essential learning competency. And for this activity sheets, we have lists research hypothesis as the milk, and its code is CS underscore RS12 dash IF dash J dash H. 8, I mean. Okay, let me show you some screenshots of my activity sheets. This is for the first day of implementation. Remember, the topic listing hypothesis is intended for 2 days. So for the first day, this is the first and the second page. Then my third and fourth page, we'll be discussing each later on. So for the first page, as you can see, aside from the title Quantitative Research Hypothesis, I included a subtitle, hashtag Iba na ang advance mag-isip. Okay, why? Because I think it will give more appeal to the post-millennials. Our students are post-millennials, and hashtag is one of their lingo. So it will be more appealing for them or catchy. Okay, after the title, of course, we have to put our most essential learning competency. And again, my milk is lists research hypothesis. And the milk, aside from the milk, I have the objectives. For the first day, I included these objectives. Remember that the objectives must be aligned or parallel with the milk as advised by the Department of Education. Okay, and on day 1, my objectives are the first, define hypothesis. The students must define first hypothesis. Before they can list hypothesis without knowing what hypothesis is, then it's for vain. So it is very important. So I included that objective for day 1. Aside from that, I also included the objective differentiate the types of hypothesis with the supplementary reading material that I will give. Of course, they can master the types of hypothesis. How can they list down hypothesis without knowing these things? That is very important. Okay, for the first activity on day 1, I have here the hypothesis prayer model. So this graphic organizer is very essential and I think it involves a higher order thinking skills also, or critical thinking as one of the C's of the 21st century skills. So the central word is hypothesis, of course. On the upper left, they have to put on the space the definition of hypothesis on their own words, not lifted. Take note, not lifted from references coming from the internet or from the books. They have to define hypothesis. Anyway, they might have the prior knowledge about hypothesis. Okay, so for example, in science, I'm sure of that. And of course, the facts and the characteristics on the upper right of space of the Freire model. What are the characteristics of hypothesis? Let's say testable or reliable, and then logical. Those things are very important also. Okay, and again, they have to put them in their own words, not lifted from any references, just like the definition. And after that, examples on the lower left, examples of hypothesis for me to know if the what they know is enough. Then the non-examples on the lower right. So it will serve also as there's no need for me to give a KWO chart activity, because it is hitting two birds with one stone with this activity, the hypothesis Freire model. And again, for critical thinking. Now let us proceed to activity number 2. Okay, I will be providing supplementary reading material, and this is just a check of their understanding, whether they understood that material that I will be giving them. And here are the questions. These are the most essential questions. The first is, why is hypothesis important in a research study? They must realize its importance. Then the second question is, why should a researcher refer to the research question or questions in formulating hypothesis? Because the research questions and the hypothesis must be parallel. So they must know the reason. Okay? They must know the purpose of aligning the hypothesis with the research questions. That is very important. Then the third essential question is, should every research be provided with hypothesis? Why or why not? They must realize that not all questions demand for hypothesis, just like the qualitative questions from what they have learned before in the previous semester, that qualitative questions don't necessarily demand or need the hypothesis. That is one. The number 4, if you were to advise a younger sister or brother on how to formulate hypothesis, what would you tell her or him? So critical thinking is here. This is a higher order thinking skills. And with the reading material, I'm sure they can answer these. Okay, my third activity for day 1 is a bubble graph. Okay, a bubble graph. Or if they wish to have another graphic organizer, of course, they can. But since this activity sheet should be simplified, I gave already the shape that is already provided. A bubble graph is just a model. And in this bubble graph, we have here the types of hypotheses. If you could notice, I already provided the terms nature, courses, sources, and categories. Okay. As the classifications of hypothesis, for example, the categories, they have to put the two connecting circles, null and alternative hypothesis. For the nature, for the courses, and for the sources, we have the directional, non-directional, theory-driven, and data-driven, so on and so forth. Okay, now for the fourth activity, okay, by the way, since it is a graphic organizer, we are also tasked to include rubric for that. My rubric is lifted from an internet source. So for attribution, okay, we don't have to engage in plagiarism. So we have to avoid that. So you have there the criteria, the organization, the summarization, the grammar and spelling, and then the design. We have four levels here. It's like a Likert. Inadequate for 1, adequate number 2, and then above average 3 points, and then exemplary 4 points. So the maximum point for each criterion is 4. Okay, the next part is, of course, this is very important for the feedback, the parents or guardians feedback. So for me to know if the students were able to answer or to understood what I have given them, or if the student had difficulty in answering, the parents can write their feedback or their comment on this space, on this portion, and their signature is very important. They have to affix their signature over their printed name. Parents and guardians. Okay, my key takeaways or the closure part of my activity sheet may serve also as the supplementary reading material. So if you can see, I have there the definition of hypothesis, the characteristics bulleted, the reasons or the importance of hypothesis, and why the hypothesis must be aligned with the research questions or the conceptual framework, as well as the different classifications of hypothesis. Okay, now we're done with day 1 activity sheets. So this is for day 2, the first and the second page. Then for the milk, remember our milk is least research hypothesis. My objective for the second day is the milk itself. I will now focus after teaching them the definition and then the different types of hypotheses. I believe that they are now ready to list down research hypothesis, whether null or alternative. So that is my objective for day 2, to list research hypothesis based from the given research problems. So this is my activity number 4, entitled listing hypothesis. So I have two problems here. So the first problem deals with online learning, whether it will improve the grade 11 students' performance in physical science. I feel it timely, and I feel it they can relate on this because we'll be dealing with modular only, since several students here, or most of the students here, don't have internet connectivity. So they can take something from this, okay? And they have to prepare for college. So they will concentrate on the last, okay, the last question there. Then my statement of the problem number 2 deals with the effects of Mobile Legends gaming to the study habits of grade 11 male students. I feel it very timely and relatable because most of the students here, especially the male, are addicted to Mobile Legends. There are some females actually. Now, they will concentrate on number 3. Is there a significant relationship between Mobile Legends online gaming and study habits of the grade 11 male students in terms of physical, social, and mental aspects of study habits? Okay, they will concentrate on that research question, number 3. Okay, after that, that is my the only activity for day 2, concentrating on the milk, listing research hypothesis. Of course, the same with the first. We have there the parents or guardians feedback. I repeat, this is very important for me to know whether the students found it easy. Okay, found my activities easy. Okay, so I can give a reinforcement if possible or if needed. Then my key takeaways for day 2. This is my key takeaways or my closure part, which will serve also as the supplementary reading material, since I have here the guidelines on how to write hypothesis, and I have samples. I provided samples of null, alternative, hypothesis. Okay. Then remember that we must be models of respect for the authors of the books that we used in our lesson. Okay, so this part is the references. Okay, for attribution, these are the references that I've used, and I already incorporated the APA 7th edition. Okay, on how to list references, of course in alphabetical order. So that is very important. Now let me give you some tips in designing activity sheets. So this was expounded by EPS Ruben de la Vega. Thank you, sir. And we have to comply with the required page setup and typography, either letter and or A4. Then the margins, the font size, the font style. We have to follow that. Of course, the second is very important. We have to ensure that we comply with the MELC as advised by the Department of Education. We have to trust them, okay? And the accuracy of the content is very important. I will be expounding that later on. And we have to, the third one, beware of our language. Check, check, and check. We know that we are not perfect, but as much as possible, we minimize, okay? I do not claim that my presentation is perfect, but at least uh, the errors are minimized. And we have to abide by the intellectual property rights. So I put the references as well as the sources of the images. Okay, here are the 8 guideposts in assuring the content quality. And may I reiterate it to you one by one. We have first integrity and consistency. Remember that in designing any learning material, not just activity sheet, the depth and mission and vision must be reflected into it. Again, we're doing it for our students, not for ourselves. The second is the organization. Since it is a simplified, our activity sheets must be simplified because we will not be having a face-to-face encounter with them. So it must be arranged, especially the activities from simplest to the most complex ones. Then the third, accuracy and recency. Of course, when we say accuracy in terms of information, in terms of grammar, in terms of structure, in terms of the question structure, they must be accurate. And recency, we must be updated, keep abreast with all the things that we have, especially in the review of related literature, which will be the next topic. So updated as well as the problems that we're giving them, the appropriateness. It must be appropriate to their age, and the activity must be appropriate as aligned with the MELC and the other objectives. Then number 5, our sensitivity must be injected also in our activity sheets. We must be sensitive with their gender, sensitive with their learn that they have different learning styles and multiple intelligence. Things to consider. Then number 6, we have the comprehensiveness. Our mastery of our subject matter. This is research, okay? And many students consider it as a Waterloo. So our mastery of practical research, specifically quantitative research, must be reflected in our activity sheet. So if the information or the data are not factual or are not veracity, then they cannot trust us. Okay, that is very important. It must be comprehensive. Look for several resources as much as possible. Do not stick on one only. The semi-last, balance. Okay, balance. We can achieve balance in preparing activity sheets in terms of the combination, the layout, the combination of text and art. So if you could remember, EPS de la Vega considered, let's say, the ratio 30 to 70 for elementary pupils. They need more visuals, but for senior high schools, we don't need that. Just a small portion or just a small percentage for art. Then the last one, readability and presentation. I used to hear bookman old man style, book old man style font, and of course the font size for the main text 11 to 12. The heading is greater than 14. Okay, so we abide by the uh, rules, the guidelines presented to us by our education program supervisors. And that's all, my fellow senior high school teachers, I mean. And I hope I am not claiming that my activity sheets are perfect, but my prayer is to serve these as a model for you to learn, and you can uh, revise your own activity sheets out of my samples. I hope you learned something, and I wish that we can do it. We can do it actually. Okay, we can do it. Just have faith in God, and just have our passion. Okay, have our passion in designing our activity sheets and other learning materials, and God will guide us. Thank you very much for staying with us, and thank you very much also to our education program supervisor, Madam April Cruz Bagnati. Yeah, I've been